Hey, good afternoon. Happy Memorial Day. My name is Daniel Brigman. New show here at KHQN. It's called Conspiracy Street. I'm from Atlanta, Georgia, and I have a radio show there, the same name, with my uncle, a friend of ours named Ed Breaker. And we're bringing the same kind of feel, the same kind of information here to Utah Valley. Today is Memorial Day, as I just mentioned. As most of you know, you're getting your barbecue ready. But we're going to take a break and talk about Constitution and how our country got to where it is, where it's going, why the Constitution is important, and what we can expect if we continue to ignore it. And so thank you for joining us, and welcome to Conspiracy Street. We have two sponsors here, NewManaFoods.net and WatchTheWeightFallOff.com, and we'll talk about those a little later. America, Memorial Day. My grandfather, he fought in World War II. He was in intelligence. He was in the Air Force, actually, which was called Army Air Force at the time, and then separated later. And he had always instilled in me a love for this country. As most people of that generation, he grew up in the Depression. He came from really nothing. His family was very poor, as my grandmother's was also on that side of my family. There were times when all he had to eat in a day was a potato. I mean, for the whole day. That's how bad it was. He grew up in that generation, went to war, fought the war, instilled in me a love of our country, not of our government necessarily, but of our country and of the Constitution, and always told me that my rights extend as far as my fist stops when it hits somebody else's nose. And that's where our rights come from, that they're God-given, and we have a right to basically do whatever we want. As time went on, and I grew up, I saw that that's really not what's going on in our country. There was a period in history, the mid 1700s was a crazy time here in America. There were many immigrants that came here seeking freedom, seeking something different than what Europe had to offer. The tyranny of the king, the tyranny of the religious tyranny that was there, and America presented a new opportunity. As those settlers began to make something out of this country, Britain began to want to take profit from it. The king wanted control over it. The Virginia Company wanted to grow tobacco, wanted to use it as a colony, and that's what it was. It became a colony. And so the people began to resist and really be bothered by the tyranny that the little encroaches on their rights. The line in the sand and the thing that the shot heard around the world in Concord came because Britain marched on the people and sought to take their arms, and they said they weren't going to. It was a church that fired the first shot, a pastor and his parishioners. The guns were actually held in the church. How different it is than today. The pulpits were alive with this talk of freedom, this talk of God, that our rights come from God, and that nobody can take them away. And if you want to try to take my gun, then you can come get it. That is the people's attitude. And still only about 1% to 2% started the revolution. At the height of the revolution, there was about 5% participation. It did not take a majority of the people, but it took a dedicated, committed minority that knew their endowment and knew who they were, and that defeated the British, the largest army in the world, the most powerful army in the world. So somewhere in this, George Washington takes control of the army as the head general, the leader of the army. He is fighting the Huns, the German mercenaries at Trenton. He needs to cross the Delaware. The soldiers are so poor, they have no shoes. There's blood in the snow from their feet cracking from almost frostbite. But they do defeat the Huns, and they do defeat Britain. And they establish our country as free, as sovereign. And this idea of God-given rights, inalienable rights, inalienable. See, when you have a lien on your car, somebody owns it. Somebody stops the title. Inalienable. We have unalienable rights. They can't be liened. They can't be mortgaged. They can't be sold. They cannot be given away. But they come from God. And in that time, the Constitution began to be framed. The countries or the states came together to form a more perfect union, free from the tyranny of the government that was before. The king, they did not want a king. They wanted a republic. So the Constitution was formed, and it is the supreme law of the land. and Marbury versus Madison, the Supreme Court decisions. This is very important. We're going to go back and forth, but Marbury versus Madison, anything that is repugnant to the Constitution is null and void in America. So some of these laws that we're going to talk about, the NDAA, things like that, they're repugnant to the Constitution, therefore they're void and null. But we have to fight for those rights, and we have to believe in those rights. So the first thing we do is we have to know about them. In the Constitution, if you don't believe me, every state has adopted the Constitution as the supreme law of the land. Article 6, Section 2, this is what it says. This Constitution and the laws of the United States which shall be made in pursuance thereof, and all treaties made of which shall be made under the authority of the United States shall be the supreme law of the land. And the judges in every state shall be bound thereby, anything in the Constitution or laws of any state to the contrary notwithstanding. It's a very wide-ranging, powerful statement. It sets the tone for our country. It sets the foundation of the rule of law. We don't have people's opinions, and we're not subject to judges, although that they've encroached on their power. They've overstepped their bounds a lot in America, and there's countless stories of that. But the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. No law and no of any state notwithstanding. And that means it doesn't matter if if Utah or Delaware, New Jersey says that there is no right to bear arms, there's no Second Amendment, but then the Constitution does say that, then it doesn't matter what they say. It's null and void. The Constitution is the supreme law of the land. That's the first thing that I hope to get across in this conversation. And it's the first step to really understanding your rights. Now, the Supreme Court has also ruled, you may think at first that this is wrong, but let me explain. The Supreme Court has ruled that there are no inherent constitutional rights. And when I first heard that, I was taken back a little bit. I was always taught we have constitutional rights, but they are correct. We have no constitutional rights. What we have are God-given, inherent, unalienable rights guaranteed by the Constitution. So that's how our government was formed. Our rights come from God. They do not come from a government. They are not subject to a tyrant. They are not subject to a king or a magistrate or judge. They are God-given, unalienable, self-evident. And no matter what anybody says contrary, the Constitution then guarantees those rights. So we allow officials to act in the public, such as police officers, judges, teachers, many different civil servants, public servants. They are under us. And here's a maxim of law. The created is never greater than the creator. So if we, the people, create the Constitution and the government that came around that, which is a republican form of government, the government can never be greater than the creator, which is us. Similarly, we can never be greater than our creator. We are created by God in his image, and he is the creator. So we can never be greater than him. So that's the maxim of law, and that's how things go in America, or at least did. And the natural law that Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, John Adams, they may have said a lot of things about religion, the religions of the time, and who could blame them with the oppression of the Catholic Church, yada, yada, yada. But they believed in that hierarchy. The creator, then us, we the people, then the Constitution and our government that was created. And the created is never greater than the creator. So the oppression that we see by the government is overstepping our bounds. Thomas Jefferson put it a different way. If the government fears the people, there is liberty. If the people fear the government, there is tyranny. And that's the way it should be. The government should fear us because we are its controller, we are its enforcer. So getting back to God-given rights. God created the whole earth, the whole world, and he put us here, and he gave us an endowment. It's a trust. He trusted us with this earth. He endowed us with this earth to subdue it. He gave us command over all the animals, everything we see. That's the basis of our country. Despite what these atheists say, despite what these so-called do-gooders and these teachers and their liberal ideas, that is the basis of our country. God gave us an endowment, and he gave us this earth to subdue it. And so we give people limited delegated authority to act in our behalf, to keep the peace and to keep our government running. That includes police officers. Now, what do they give us in exchange? This is very important and the key to holding government accountable and to ensuring that our rights are maintained, because this has gotten way out of balance. They give us an oath of office in return. And their oath of office, their number one duty is to uphold and support the Constitution. So when they act in the public and they ignore our rights or they abuse our rights, then we have redress by Title 42, by Title 18 of the United States Code. They must honor our rights, or they have no right and they have no authority to act in the public. If a police officer is just going to be pulling people over, if this was third world, some banana republic, and police are just going to pull people over and steal their money and take their pocketbook and whatever they're carrying and send the people on their way, then they lost their authority. They lost their delegated authority and they're acting outside of law. And they're no more, they are nothing more than a criminal at that point. And so that is how our government was set up. And so we must understand that hierarchy. So he made us the beneficiary. So God gives us everything free. That's another key point. Everything is given free, and we're allowed to be free, to use our industry, to use our incentive, our intelligence, and what he gave us to better ourselves, to better our family, and to hopefully to bless mankind. He gave it all free. And Satan then came and put a price on it. You can buy anything in this world with money. You've probably heard that before. Many of you have. So then we have a situation where Satan puts a price on everything and God gives everything free. And they're at polar opposites. And so then things become a monetary. So then we put money between that hierarchy: God, man, Constitution, and the government that's established. Everything that is below that, teachers, police officers, the DMV, the Department of Motor Vehicles, that is all below that and is subject to this hierarchy. You know, you've seen pyramid. I'm sure many of you have seen the pyramid, the New World Order type pyramids. The true hierarchy has God at the top. And we as his created creations, his children, are right below that. And the Constitution is there to protect and guarantee those rights. Remember, we don't have constitutional rights. We have inalienable, unalienable rights given to us by God, protected by the Constitution. That's why the Constitution is so important. And that's why tyrants, the history of the world is full of tyrants. You look through governments throughout the world, the rule rather than the exception is tyrants, is kings, is oppression, is Hitler, is Stalin, is Mao, is Pol Pot. Is the number one unnatural cause of death in the 20th century was government. And for 1 second, we have people talking about the Second Amendment and not the need for it, and talking about people getting accidentally killed by a gun. Listen, 200 plus million people in the world were killed by governments in the 20th century. That's okay. I'll take the risk that there'll be an accident with my pistol that's in my house. I got a much better chance of getting killed by a government than I do an accident with a pistol. That's a fact. But people don't want to look at that. But whatever. Getting back to God's endowment. Satan put a price on it. So then money comes between, so God and then money. So in the world, for Satan, our money becomes God and becomes more important than people. So money replaces, and the power structure that comes around it replaces the authority and the endowment of God. So, you want to see how powerful money is. Go to Las Vegas and then tip your bellman some exorbitant rate and see how he treats you. So he'll treat you different because of money, and that's sick. And that's a perversion of the way things should be set up. And there's a quote by Thomas Jefferson. JFK, in one of his speeches, he says, I'm paraphrasing here, but he said that the greatest collection of American minds occurred when Jefferson dined alone. And the more I study about Jefferson, and he wrote the Constitution, his quotes, the more I start to believe that that's true. He is probably our greatest mind. But here's one of the things he said, and his insight. And these founding fathers, I don't want to hear anybody talk about that these are agrarian fools and outdated people. If somebody tells you the Constitution's outdated, then they're your enemy. Then they're trying to take this hierarchy and try to change it and try to reverse it and try to put you under their thumb and under their authority. Because the Constitution, the way it's set up, nobody has you under their authority except God. The only time that you are even subject to them is when you act outside and you hurt somebody, you steal from them, you maim them, you do some kind of damage to them, you break their rights. Then the government has the authority given by everybody else to subdue you to some extent, whether jail or whatever, not by a traffic ticket, a violation, a code violation. See, statutes and codes are not law. You know, the laws of the land, we've heard we want to obey the laws of the land. Well, the law of the land is the Constitution. The supreme law of the land is the Constitution. And we must learn about it, know about it, or we are sorely doomed to repeat the past. It is almost an aberration, the freedoms we have in this country. It is a miracle. There's no question. I'm sure many of you have thought that and studied that. And this Memorial Day, we honor those who fought for that freedom. And getting back to Jefferson, one of the quotes in this hierarchy. He says, if the American people ever allow private banks to control the issue of their currency, first by inflation, then by deflation, the banks and corporations that will grow up around them will deprive the people of all property until their children wake up homeless on the continent their fathers conquered. I believe that banking institutions are more dangerous to our liberties than standing armies. The issuing power should be taken from the banks and restored to the people to whom it properly belongs. Now, like I told you, my grandfather was a small child during the Depression. My great-grandmother, who I was lucky enough to spend quite a bit of time with, I went over her house. I can't remember how old I was. I don't know, 10, 15, something like that. She had quite a bit of money that was sitting in her dresser. To a 10-year-old or however old I was, it seemed like a lot of money. I mean, it was substantial. I said, Nana, why don't you put that money in the bank? Why are you having it here? It's not safe here. You know, I had been programmed. I had learned to think that way. She told me, she looked me straight in the eye and she said, no, that money's fine there. It could stay right there. That's fine. I'm not putting it in the bank. And then through conversations later, I learned why many people from that generation, they learned to not trust banks with the bank runs, with what the banks did with the foreclosures during the Depression. She didn't trust the banks. And the people of that generation didn't trust the banks. And they knew that they were liars and they were con artists that had come to steal their property. So we see that now. We see the homeless and we see all the foreclosures that the banks have manipulated, and they've raised the currency, and then they deflate the currency, then they take it back. And they suck the life out of the economy. And out of nothing, paper that they print out of nothing, a Federal Reserve note is nothing but paper. What is a note? A promise to pay later. It's not money. There's three types of money. Money of substance, which is gold and silver. Money of accounting, and money of exchange. Money of exchange is you go to the gas station and give them $1 for a pack of gum. Money of accounting is digits that's in the computer. All we have is money of accounting and money of exchange. There's no money of substance. Out of money they print out of nothing but paper, these banks are able to manipulate us and put us in a position of vulnerability where we can't even control our destiny. And the endowment that God gave us, this earth, is bought up from them and stolen from us left and right. And we almost seem helpless to fight it because we are so ignorant and been programmed to be so ignorant towards this process. The Constitution has a protection for us, but through administrative law, they've learned to con that, to take that away. Now, I live in Utah. Many of you, this is going over the net. I don't know how many people we even have listening. It's a holiday, but I'm glad you're here if you're here. Think about this, the Constitution. The Constitution was not ratified. In 1787, it was put forward, but it wasn't ratified until 1791, until the Bill of Rights was put in it. The first 10 amendments, that was so important to the people. They had experienced so much tyranny. They said, no, we do not want there to be vagueness. We do not want anybody to misunderstand. We do not want future generations to misunderstand. We are going to delineate these 10 rights that are absolute. Then it was ratified by the states, and only then. One of the Article 4, The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable search and seizures shall not be violated. I think a foreclosure is a seizure. I could be wrong, but that's the way I see it. So shall not be violated, and continues on, and no warrant shall issue but upon probable cause supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the person or things to be seized. So first of all, I have a right, inherent, unalienable, God-given, guaranteed law, the law of the land, supreme law, that I'm to be secure in my house against seizures only by an oath or affirmation. So a bank is going to come forward with an oath affirmation, says that they loan me money and they have a right to take my house. The Fifth Amendment. That no one shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. Without due process of law. So what does due process of law include? In Utah, they say that's a non-judicial state. Well, that's completely unconstitutional. Now, what have we already talked about? If something's contradictory, if something's repugnant to the Constitution, then it is void. If they're in opposition, one of them has to reign supreme. The Constitution reigns supreme because it's there to protect our God-given unalienable rights. These statutes and these codes by these courts, by these administrative courts, are there. They've been manipulated to protect the banks, to protect lawyers and the judges and their interests, particularly the banks. Of course, they want a non-judicial foreclosure. Of course, they don't want to go to court and have to have a trial by jury. Of course, they want to steal your property without you knowing about and without you fighting for your rights. So Article 7. In suits at common law where the value in controversy shall exceed $20, the right of trial by jury shall be preserved, and no fact tried by a jury shall be otherwise re-examined in any court of the United States. Shall be preserved, served to you. It's there waiting for you. In Utah, you have to demand a trial by jury. So if somebody's going to take your house and a non-judicial foreclosure, they just violated your rights. These banks perpetually, habitually are violating our rights, taking our property without a trial by jury. They must come to a jury of your peers and present the evidence and say that they are justified to take this house. If they don't, they have not done it lawfully. They have not done it legally. But since when do banks care anything about the law and the legality of it? I'm going to stop for 1 second here. I have a quote to end the show on, but briefly, let me tell you a little bit about our sponsors. These are a couple companies. Right here we have HCGX90 on watchtheweightfalloff.com. It's a molecular frequency encoded, non-chemical, non-hormone spray that you put under your tongue, you take with a diet. It's totally different than HCG that's out there, but the results are magnificent. It comes with a 110% guarantee, money-back guarantee. If you follow the plan, you don't have results, you're not all smiles, we'll give you 110% of your money back. The plan allows, HCG typical diet is 500 calories. There's you can go up to 1,000 calories with this, and you can also spray during the middle of the day if you feel hungry. Most people on it that I've talked to, they have had fantastic results. Their hunger and there has been lower, and their energy level has been more than even when they've been off it. They felt great. We give a 110% money back guarantee. I lost 25 pounds in 21 days. All you have to lose is weight. The only thing that's stopping you is your hesitation. It's guaranteed. You don't get the results, we'll give you your money back. Here we have New Manna Food. It's a 25 plus year shelf life. In a 5 ml bag, nitrogen flushed, USDA prime ingredients, no MSG, no trans fat. Many of them are gluten-free and vegetarian. Go to New Manna Foods. That's NUMANNA foods.net. NUMANNA foods.net. Give me a call on the phone number. Tell me you heard it on the show. We'll give you a big discount. We appreciate your business and looking at it. Okay, my last quote is, all the banks that come around and all these corporations, they have a vested interest in the Constitution going away. They have a vested interest in your rights being ignored and you not knowing about them. Because once you know about them, then you're going to fight for them. There was in 1880, there's a little question about when it was said, but apparently sometime in 1880, a man by the name of John Swinton, which was a prominent, one of the preeminent journalists of his time in New York, was asked to give a toast or was given a toast at the New York Press Club, and they toasted the independent press. And I'll leave you with that. This is what he said, so you can know what's going on. Do not necessarily believe everything you hear. There is no such thing as at this date of the world's history in America as an independent press. You know it, and I know it. There is not one of you who dares to write your honest opinions. And if you did, you know beforehand they would never appear in print. I am paid weekly for keeping my honest opinion out of the paper I am connected with. Others of you are paid similar salaries for similar things. And any of you who would be so foolish as to write honest opinions would be out on the streets looking for another job. If I allowed my honest opinion to appear in one issue of my paper before 24 hours, my occupation would be gone. The business of the journalist is to destroy the truth, to lie outright, to pervert, to vilify, to fawn at the feet of Mammon, and to sell his country and his race for his daily bread. You know it, and I know it. What folly this is, toasting an independent press. We are the tools and vassals of rich men behind the scenes. We are their jumping jacks. They pull the strings, and we dance. Our talents, our possibilities, and our lives are all the property of other men. We are intellectual prostitutes. Thank you for joining us on this Memorial Day. Have a great afternoon. Conspiracy Street.